was very,
Good
on
morning,
me.
Earth.
So
This
then
is
I went
Adam
back
Sturch,
to camp
broadcasting
and
from
I
the Mushroom
said,
Mansion, Taos, New
let's
Mexico,
just take a
working
walk
on
down
oil
the trail.
painting
Maybe we can
Spring
work
on
out these
Pluto.
paintings.
Okay,
I wouldn't even
today
mention
I'm going to
it.
start with
I
a
would
real
just
simple
sort of, as
step
I was
on this,
consoling them,
just
put
deepening the
out my
reds with
hand
a
and
permanent red
the
glaze,
fireflies would
and then
drop from the trees.
accentuating the
They would
highlights,
realize the error of their
re-accentuating the
way, and
highlights
so
on top
forth
of
and
that
so
with a
on.
titanium
Well,
white.
of
So here we
course,
go.
that didn't happen. So then I said, well, maybe I'm being too humble here. I should at least make a commitment to the thing. So I said, stand here and watch. And I raised up my hands to call the insects of the jungle to me. And then the line was delivered the second time, I pity you. And you're not, you're, this is all true. It is true that the butterflies danced on the back of my hand. Well, so what is one to conclude from this? Well, I think what you have to conclude is that ego is the absolute impediment to Tao. And that if you care what other people think, if you care how it's going to impact on your reputation, if you have any of these lesser concerns, this power, this radiance, this dimension of authenticity can't approach you, and we all have it, and I'm sure I have it more than most people, and yet even I am able to let down into these places where the world works magic, and I think women and intuitive men and people who aren't quite as analytical as I may be are able to do it much more, and that is the real proof. You can talk about be here now till you're blue in the face, but the real proof is when nature responds like that. Well, no, I don't mean caring about others. I mean that if you are, I guess the sin is pride. The sin is pride. If it thrills you that you're enlightened, or if you're glad you beat out your competition, or if you want to display your accomplishment, then it's ruin. It can only be, it has to be held so very lightly, so very lightly. It cannot be shared, in a sense. Forget sharing it, because we're not pure enough to share it. It's amazing that we're pure enough to occasionally embody it, I told you the story about sitting on the beach. It always happens when you're alone, because then you get no credit. You see, it's no credit to you, and you shouldn't get any credit. But sitting on a beach, I can't even remember the substance, but something like this, or maybe something like this, I'm not sure, but sitting on a beach, meditating, holding my hands like this, and in the middle of the meditation, I become aware of something like a bug, or something is on my hand, and it's like tickling me. And so I ignore it, and then, and then I come back to it, and then it feels fairly substantial. Maybe I should check this out. So then finally I open my eyes, and I look down, and there's a crab. And the crab is cleaning my fingernails. And the crab cleans all of my fingernails, and then runs across my lap and cleans all of the fingernails on the other hand. Well, what this is just sitting still and letting nature be what it wants to be, and letting it manifest its intentionality. We tear through and bust up and smash apart, and then we say, well, that was a nice hike in the woods, And always, if you will go into the forest and sit down, and it's about finding the time of the place. And in the time of the place, the magic is coming and going in a way that if you're moving faster or slower, it just isn't there. And I've often had experiences that I felt that were connected with psychedelics, but the main function of the psychedelic was to get me to be still for a long time. Kat had a wonderful experience on a Mexican pyramid. She was exploring it. She took LSD or something and fell asleep. And when she woke up, the tree she had been sleeping in, that she had been staring into the branches before she fell asleep, and so had a very clear picture of it. When she awakened, a very large snake had shed its skin directly above her in the branches of the trees. Well, you know, part of this is the doorway into coincidence, but part of it is magical attunement with what wants to be. This is what I think Kay must have been indicating. This is not language, this is communication. This is, you know, the breath of the Tao. And everything that we say betrays this. So, feng shui, geomancy, an elaborate theory about energy flowing through the earth. As a verbal model, to me, quite unconvincing. As a set of feelings about the world, as a sense of the intentionality of place, incontrovertibly true. You know, I said earlier, maybe we lie. Maybe language is to allow us to lie. That language betrays communication.
Hold on.
Well, then we have to find our way into either silence, or gesture, or dance, or song, some way of unbridling the horse we ride so that it can take us where it wants to go, which is back into this place where ego isn't grabbing. Because you see, it must be so that if the magic retreats from each one of us in the wilderness, how much more then it must retreat from us as a community, en masse, as a planetary species. So we live in a domain of triviality that we have created. You know, we have trivialized the world. The elves, the fairies, the water sprites, the energies that flow in the earth with the seasons, the movement of the stars, the machinery of being, the drama of life and death. We push all this away and we hold ourselves above it. I mean, death is sanitized, birth is sanitized, everything is made less authentic, as though we are somehow threatened by the authenticity of being. Why are we threatened by the authenticity of being? Why does it take such tremendously powerful hallucinogenic agents to put us where we should be operating in terms of our pattern of caring for the world and for each other? This is a real question, I think. It goes hand in hand with the question that I think is very worthwhile for the group to try to deal with, which is, if psychedelics are so wonderful, are we better people? And if they are wonderful and we're not better people, then why not? What precisely is our relationship to people who know nothing of this? Is this a way? Is it the way? Is it no way at all? How does the mystical vision feed back into how we are with and for each other? Are we doing enough with that? Are we, do we exemplify enough what we know and what we feel? And if we don't, how can we? Because this is our faith, I believe, that we have something precious that we want to give to those who are operating without awareness of it. But before you give something away, you have to wonder after the consequences. I don't have answers to this, and this is the question that should hover over our lives. Do we embody the radiant correctness of what we say we are pursuing? I certainly feel that I am a flawed and fragile vessel for this. I mean, my strength is my ordinariness. It must be. It's the only suit I can play. So that must have been the idea, that it would be Joe anybody. But how can we make it live for ourselves? And this is a problem with the evolution of language, the evolution of communication, of caring, of intent, and then of implementing the vision. I don't know, maybe I'm impatient, maybe it's happening, and maybe the awareness of the changing earth, the awareness of the needs of the earth, the awareness of the needs of women, the awareness of social injustice generally, is all part of this thing. I had a very satisfying experience recently. A guy, a publisher and editor, came to see Kat and I from Australia, and we talked about all this stuff. He was a fellow psychedelico, and he said, nobody had ever said this to me before. He said, from where I'm sitting, I think that you're winning. And by your winning, what he meant was that inch by inch by inch, the dream is actually gaining ground. There will be a second hearing. There will be an appeal from the absolute judgments of 20 years ago. Well, then in that case, it devolves upon all of us to embody this thing and to not cut corners and to as it says in the Grateful Dead song, try just a little bit harder, just a little bit more. And I think doing that, and a lot of it is a letting go, it's not a pushing into, it's a letting go, then the magic draws close. I mean, nature loves courage. You've heard me say this. The way nature shows her love of courage is by removing obstacles. That's how the shaman can dance in the waterfall.
You just came back
he
in.
can't dance in the waterfall,
right
except that he's so damn courageous that God suspends the laws of physics in the face of such faith. It's something like that. It's the courage to be. The courage to be. To be is to dance in the waterfall. And I'm really not, if it sounds like I'm berating you, I'm not. I'm speaking, you're serving as a screen for my own psychotherapeutic process, because I clutch at many levels. But fortunately, and thank God, there were enough instances of recklessness and sheer error and pure madness and peer pressure and all of these things that I got a taste. And I think you all have a taste. That's what unites us in trying to run this thing to ground. And it's the heart of it that is so hard to talk about. I mean, I skim the ideas off the depth of a sea of heart whose boundaries cannot be taken, because that's my style. But the unsaid part, the dizziness of the things unsaid. Remember the poem by Trumbull Stickney? I lean over your meaning's edge, and I feel the dizziness of the things you have not said. And the dizziness of the things unsaid, for us fans of dizziness, is ecstasy, the vertigo, Weren't we first spun in the schoolyard? Wasn't that your first altered state of consciousness? To be spun and spun until you fall down and watch the world move around. It's the dizziness of the things unsaid. That's a real problem for me. I'm a sayer. But it's worth invoking it, if only to let it resonate in the silence. Well, there are different things here. There's a lot of good in psychedelics that is not what I've been talking about today. A lot of people are hurting. A lot of people have traumatic past histories. A lot of people need to be, unplugged, cleaned out, straightened out. I see the psychedelic experience as a birthright, and we can't have a free society until people are free to explore their own minds. It's so obvious. So, I'm as against restricting access to drugs as I am to burning books. It offends me in the same way. People must be free. We are the measure of the political universe, not the state, not the race. These have all been tried with horrible results. Individual human beings must be free. Anything which ameliorates that has to be looked at very, very carefully. Sexuality and the restriction of information access and understanding that revolved around that issue for the past 500 years just shows me that we don't want to go into that with the mind. Because anything can be taboo. Your genitals don't have to be taboo. Your mind could be taboo. Anything could be taboo. But the presence of the taboo is so destructive and alienating, and so makes community so impossible that we have to take individual men and women and we have to make them free. That is the system where freedom has to be maximized. I don't say that we have to convert these people to the existence of magic. In fact, we don't have to convert them to anything. The nature of the beast, meaning the nature of these hallucinogens, will set the agenda once we are free to inquire. That's all. Freedom of inquiry. Well, on one level, you're right. The laws are totally irrelevant. We ignore them. So does everyone else. You mean we worry about them? Styles of taking and styles of getting together. Yeah. Well, this is like the same question about sexuality or automobiles or anything. Obviously, though we say all people are created equal, we don't sell guns to 8-year-olds and this sort of thing. But within the context of reasonable people attempting to reach reasonable positions, I think this should be as free as possible. I think there should be an institution for handling it. You see, if we were a primitive or a pre-literate society, there would be shamans who would be professionals, and they would take out the adolescent boys and the adolescent girls and put them through ceremonies that would inculcate them into the secret life and belief systems of the tribe, and then certain ones would be selected out to be the shamans of the next generation. We don't have any kind of institution like that. part of my motivation for a public career is the belief that psychotherapy could be this. The motivation behind psychotherapy is entirely correct, but how can we make it real, you know? Shamanism does this. You see, I wouldn't go to a shaman for a cure if I had carcinoma or something like that. I regard them as most effective in the realm of mental problems, psychological conditions. This is why when ethnobotany got started, the first things that are looked at are the psychoactive plants. Because if a shaman tells you, this will cause you to see visions, he's probably correct. But if he tells you this will cure a disease, this is less certainly so, because the concept of curing disease is a more Western notion. The concept of restoring neurotic imbalance seems to be pretty generalized worldwide. I think that if you're interested in drugs, the first stop is the library, and it's a long stop, and you educate yourself. This all seems very natural to me. This is how I did it, and how all my friends did it. In the early 1960s, there were articles in newspapers about morning glory seeds and this kind of thing. We followed up and learned how to use scientific literature to figure out dosages and all of this kind of thing. For me, I take drugs seriously. So I also I'm perfectly aware of their capacity to cause a problem. So you want to be educated. You want to have all the information. So people, number one, have to be educated. And then they have to be given the freedom to decide. Now, inevitably, certain people will evolve pathological lifestyles of addiction, dependency, and abuse. But those people usually can evolve these lifestyles there are perfectly legal avenues to evolve these lifestyles. Alcohol is obviously more conducive to these maladaptive lifestyles than almost anything else. If I were totally juiced, you could tell it. If I were a lifelong junkie and I had just shot, I could deliver this lecture. It wouldn't trigger any awareness in you. So the debilitating, damaging, maladaptive drugs are all legal. And what is restricted then is stuff which gives you funny ideas. That's the problem, the funny ideas category. Well, put that way, it doesn't take long to see why. Because funny ideas are very problematic for institutions. On the other hand, funny ideas are the life breath of creativity. So, who are we going to make comfortable? A bunch of controlled freaks? See, I think it was really a mistake in the 60s to try and take society away from the people who want to run it. To wage revolution with psychedelic drugs, where, I don't know if those people realized, but their weapon was effective enough that the world's first nuclear power was quaking in its boots. Because you could produce 10, 20, 40 million hits of LSD. Well, so that's terrifying to an establishment, because what if you changed 20, 60, 40 million minds? But if it can be kept in a human scale, where you say out in California, people hang out at Esalen, and then they take off their clothes, and then they meditate, and then a few of them go on to drugs. This doesn't threaten anybody. The way in which LSD was used to thumb noses at the establishment brought trouble. It, I don't think, should have been seen as a direct tool of social and political action. It should have been handled as an adjunct to creativity. Its agenda would have surfaced. We would have ended up in a better place. This is what Aldous Huxley wanted to do, you know. He felt that you go to the people, to the power freaks, in a non-threatening way. You don't say to them, hey, Mr. Dean, hey, Mr. President, 100,000 acid heads have surrounded your administration building, and if you don't accede to these 15 non-negotiable demands, we're going to pull the place apart. But no, you send his friend that he went to Yale with to him, who says, you know, a few of us have been getting together and there's really this extraordinary thing happening and we think you should be brought in on this. This is going to be tremendous. But it polarized. I find it hard to understand. I mean, I like Leary very much, and Metzner is a close personal friend of mine, but I'm now 42 years old. I'm the age Leary was when he was fired from Harvard. If I were fired from Esalen, so to speak, my response would not to be a tour of the major campuses of America to set the troops marching and sending the checks home to mom and dad. I'm delighted that people 16 to 25 are interested in what I have to say, but I don't see myself as the Pope of the Children's Crusade. It's not like that at all. We need to reach creative people in all levels of society and in all positions of power. Creative people will respond to this. It is, after all, a personal thing. It's a personal thing. The revolution that wanted to give everybody LSD also wanted to have sex in the streets. This was a banner. I've shouted it myself through the streets. But hey, is that going to do a lot for relationships? To have an orgy at the corner of Bancroft and Telegraph? Will this make us all better able to relate to our significant other? I'm not sure. So I think a lighter touch. What was also absent in the 60s was any awareness of tradition. People thought that LSD came from God via Albert Hoffman. They didn't realize that shamanism was about this. They didn't realize that that there was a huge body of evidence that they could call on to support their position, which was, this is what religion really was about for the first million years, and this is what ecstasy was about before it became about, silent prayer and abstention and rejection of the senses and all of this stuff. So that really, I think, was the revolution and contribution of the 70s, the anthropological angle. I mean, it's these LSD literature.
Okay, well, I ran my time down to the last 3 seconds. I'll do a little wrap up here and splice them together. It's fine. So,
the book was published.
That gets another layer of permanent red. Get some nice light absorption, some more texture happening, some good reflected light, and starts developing the shading of the foreground portrait a little more clearly. Work them in and around to where the step shadows extend into his forehead, which is kind of cool there. And I also did a little work to this planet which I got a little bit carried away with, which is why we ran out of time. But that's it for the moment, so thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting spring on Pluto, and about to go feed Eidolon, who is meow-nowing her adorable little brains out, because she knows there's slime headed her direction. I had to go to the store yesterday, and she can sense when there's a can of Eidolon slime in the house. Oh, Fuzzy, can't you, baby? Oh, I know it's crazy. We got slime coming. Oh, that's the slime face. I know it's coming. Alright, so Eidolon says hello, and that's it for the moment. Have a good day, Earth.